This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by Liquid IV. Summer is winding down, and that means it's time for all the fall rituals we look forward to this time of year, like weekend football or the return of pumpkin spice everything.
One fall ritual that deserves to be added is daily hydration and energy from Liquid IV. One stick of Liquid IV Hydration Multiplier Plus Energy delivers 100 milligrams of natural caffeine plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. An all-in-one formula that hydrates you better than water alone and leaves you feeling focused and alert so you can accomplish all the things you want and need to do.
So tear, pour, and live more and start a new fall ritual with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code RAW at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RAW at liquidiv.com. Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
Hey, Larson.
Welcome back to Going in Raw. Count out on today's episode. We are going to go through the top 10 worst rivalries in the history of pro wrestling. Man, we got some doozies on here, Larson.
Oh, there's some bad ones.
There's some stinkers on here. There was one. We'll start with this one. We'll start with number 10.
10.
Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton. I remember in real time knowing the worst way this could end up and actually not realizing just how worse it got or it was going to be at WrestleMania. But obviously this one
WrestleMania 33. You got to specify.
WrestleMania 33.
They had 2 WrestleMania matches.
Yeah, right. WrestleMania 33. Yeah, that's right. The other one was The Fiend, right? That was Fiend.
That was 37.
Fiend, yeah. But no, this was lead up to 33. And here's the thing about this one is that there were moments that were kind of good.
It had a lot of potential.
It did have a lot of potential.
Early on especially. The build-up to Mania 33, you had Randy kind of getting into the Wyatt family, Luke Harper, Brody Lee, being immediately suspect of that. And the dynamic between the three of them was actually really good a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Randy wins the Rumble, says, this is a time where Bray was champion, says, I'm not going to wrestle you. I give up my spot. Mm-hmm. Well, then we have another Battle Royal match on SmackDown where it's AJ and Luke Harper are the final 2. AJ wins. In the end, Orton gets his Mania spot back because he turns on Bray, burns down his cabin in the bayou, doing the pose in front of the Inferno there that's going on. And our nightmare scenario coming out of all of this. 1-on-1 Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt was boring face. Randy Orton getting the win. That's exactly what happened. Bray was promising he'd showcase some sort of satanic powers during the course of the WrestleMania match, and that consisted of projecting images of flies on the ring. Hardly satanic.
I'll be honest with you, though. If you think of the cardinal sin of pro wrestling, as I always say, it's bore me. Do anything but bore me. And if you really want to channel satanic powers, I can't think of a worse hell than sitting through that match at WrestleMania 33 between Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton again, where there's just projections. And it was like all weirdly produced too. Like all of a sudden everything would stop. And then like there'd be a projection of like maggots on the ring. And it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, is this supposed to be discombobulating? Is this supposed to be some sort of represent? Clearly, Bray Wyatt just knew somebody in the truck and put on like a silly slideshow, science slideshow.
One got some stock footage,
right,
of insects and such, and slip that file with all the stock footage on there to someone in production that says, hey, at this moment in the match, show this.
Yeah. Right.
And that was it. Really hardly satanic powers. He just has connections in production.
So there was multiple failures here. Number one, I mean, honestly, the small bit of success here was Bray Wyatt in this. It was Elimination Chamber. He beat John Cena in the Elimination Chamber match. John Cena walked in as champion. Bray Wyatt walked out as champion. And everybody loved that because everybody just wanted Bray Wyatt to get that validation. And, it was back when the WWE Championship was secondary to the Universal Championship. And so it was like a mid-card match, basically, and at Mania. But in that moment in time, Bray Wyatt winning the title, that was a really cool thing. And then you've got this dynamic between Luke Harper and Randy Orton. It's like, hey, what if they finally use this to have Luke Harper break out on his own? And it's unfortunate because I never really realized, and I think a lot of people didn't realize what Luke Harper / Brody Lee could have been until he went to AEW and showed us his wide range, his not only his comedic range, his dramatic range. He was just a really compelling presence on TV, and Vince just sort of sapped him of all that in WWE as Luke Harper. Well, this was the one time when, hey, we could get that. And you could make a new star out of Luke Harper. You could put him in a triple threat with Randy and Bray. And then, of course, they just don't do that.
No. That would have been the most interesting route. Triple threat for the title at WrestleMania. Luke Harper, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt. Even after this match at WrestleMania, they had a House of Horrors match, I think it was called. It was at Payback.
It was
afterwards. We were there. It was
Mm-hmm.
half cinematic, but the match finished in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And Jinder Mahal got involved. This was in the prelude, I believe, to Jinder being winning the title from Randy Orton.
Right.
And it was a step up to a degree over the WrestleMania match, but still not exactly the best of the cinematic efforts from WWE. And then you go forward a few years when The Fiend feud with Randy Orton again, and you had that really confusing match at WrestleMania where everything seemed to indicate that Bray Wyatt was going to win. And then Alexa Bliss comes out of the Jack-in-the-Box, distracts Bray, Randy wins, and then eventually lights The Fiend on fire in an Inferno match.
Yeah. I mean, it was, they were really, you have to think that pandemic, not having a live crowd. I mean, it's not like at that point, Vince McMahon really understood what people wanted. He understood what he wanted them to want. But imagine also being thrown for a loop when it comes to the live crowd, because you got to figure that Vince at that point, after decades and decades, he probably did rely on the live crowd to give him an indication as to what he wanted them to want.
That's the way of putting it.
And without the live crowd there, boy, they were throwing some shit at the wall to see if anything would stick. And then they couldn't really figure it out until they get the TV ratings. And it's like, oh, well, that's just because of pandemic. You blame everything on pandemic.
Yeah.
And so they were doing some wild ass shit. And the Fiend stuff within, obviously you get the highest of the highs with the Fiend because he had the Firefly Funhouse match. But the Orton stuff of being set on fire. And then you find out through that documentary that Bray was not happy with that Fiend outfit. He was like, I can't move in this thing. It just sucks. And we could all kind of tell that. But we also figured, hey, maybe this is his idea, so he's into it. And not really.
Nah, it turned out it wasn't the case.
I will say this, though, and I would imagine it's probably Jason Baker, but the character design on that Alexa Bliss WrestleMania bit was off the hook. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah, it was. A lot of the production design for all of Bray's stuff has been off the charts great. So,
and I mean, it was like the visual of Randy Orton burning down the house was cool, but I remembered very distinctly when it happened, you and I were complaining about it because you missed a couple of story beats.
Yeah, they rushed through that.
He just went straight to that.
I mean, Randy Orton at one point was teasing eye lasers.
Yes. Yeah, I remember.
Got an explanation for that.
Yeah.
He just burned down the house.
Hanging out with Bray Wyatt. All right, let's move on now to number 9. MJF versus Adam Cole, the AEW Devil.
Another story here, another rivalry that was actually set up pretty well. They were rivals forced together to be a tag team, and through that became, at least on screen, friends. Although Adam Cole obviously had ulterior motives. He was trying to get close to MJF, by becoming tag champs with MJF, get him worn down enough so when he eventually turned on him and beat him for that title, after failing to secure the title before, that it would be easier, and then his plan would be there for all to see. Of course, the injury at Grand Slam about a year ago, where Adam Cole broke his ankle, just seemingly ruined all of it. And, sometimes when companies have to adapt something good comes out of it. Sometimes when companies have to adapt, you get the AEW Devil. And so shortly after Adam Cole broke his leg, you had MJF, you had the Acclaimed, you had the Bang Bang Gang getting attacked by masked assailants with the devil mask on the back of their hoodies. And we all figured, oh, the devil's Adam Cole. Because in one of the last things we saw with Adam Cole and MJF together, there's the devil mask behind Adam Cole. It's there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get into as far as what went wrong after the injury. I'll start with this. So the Acclaim get laid out. Bang Bang Gang get laid out. They say together, let's join forces and we could take it to AEW Devil and Friends. Issue is, they never did that. They never had a match with the Undisputed Kingdom. In the end, they fought each other.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And never once got into a program with AEW Devil and Friends. Of course, Undisputed Kingdom, we're talking Roddy Strong, the Kingdom, Mike Bennett, Matt Taven, and then Wardlow.
Yeah.
And so you go to World's End, Samoa Joe versus MJF for the title. Adam Cole, on crutches, comes to ringside, seemingly to root on his best friend, his bro Chacho, MJF. And towards the end of the match, out of his pocket, he produces a Dynamite Diamond ring, gives it to MJF. Well, the delay in getting the ring out of his pocket was enough for Samoa Joe to lock on a coquina clutch that eventually MJF passed out to. And then we had the reveal, officially, of Adam Cole as AEW Devil, Undisputed Kingdom unmasked. We know who the perpetrators of these attacks were. And then MJF was attacked and then written off TV for months because he had a number of injuries he had to recuperate from. He had a bad shoulder, a bad hip.
Yeah.
And so whatever phase of the story could have happened directly from there, even if Adam Cole wasn't cleared, couldn't be accomplished because MJF was injured.
Yeah.
And so you had Adam Cole come out and say, well, we're going to get all the championships here, and Wardlow's going to win me the AEW title. And then he's going to hand it over and give it to me, and I'll be champion then.
Yeah.
And I believe Wardlow had one title opportunity and lost.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been on TV in a while.
Right.
Adam Cole's been on TV. Last time we saw him on TV, it was after MJF came back. And MJF hit him with a brain buster, seemingly to kind of tie up that loose end for now because we don't know when Adam Cole's coming back.
Yeah, apparently he was at backstage of TV. He's been backstage of TV a couple times now.
Now MJF is off TV for a bit. And it's unfortunate that the injury happened because I think the conclusion could have been really good.
It's dangerous territory when you're dealing with this devil stuff. When you're dealing with this, and on top of that, dude, from the moment the devil was introduced, I think both of you and I both sussed out, even independent of each other, as Adam Cole.
It made the most sense. We knew where the story was going as soon as Adam Cole was getting buddy-buddy with MJF. We knew where it was going.
We were able to see the body outline of the various attackers and was like, oh, that dude is the most Matt Taven guy there is.
1,000% Wardlow right there.
Yeah, I think Wardlow. Yeah, no. The one that was the best was in one segment, they attack. It's clearly Wardlow. The next thing that happened on TV after a commercial break,
his hair's all messed up. Yeah,
was a Wardlow match, and his hair was all messed up. He had mask hair.
Yeah.
That was the funniest. Grab a bottle of water, put it on your head, and slick it back, dude.
I know. Just get a comb or something. Come on.
AEW, I'm always an advocate for AEW to inject just a little bit of that sports entertainment into their product. The story. And honestly, when I say sports entertainment, I mean stuff like Hangman versus Swerve, which is, when somebody burns down somebody's house, that's sports entertainment. When
it's not a sports-centric presentation of pro wrestling, no.
Right. The rivalry exists outside of the ring, and what happens inside of the ring furthers the rivalry. this kind of business is just not what AEW should be doing. It's not what WWE should be doing, this kind of stuff. It's goofy. It's silly. It doesn't commit the cardinal sin of boring me, but it really risks jeopardizing whatever credibility your organization might have as being, we do the wrestle stuff. And granted, that's why I do think that's when AEW was still kind of figuring out what their identity was. And yeah, it's unfortunate that a lot of the injuries dictated, this story not playing out. But yeah, I don't know that introducing the devil aspect of it was ever gonna work. And maybe if everything aligned, it would have been brilliant, but not the best. Not the best thing.
And now the question is, if they choose to revisit this once Adam Cole is cleared, once MJF's back on TV. MJF is a heel now.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Adam Cole just perpetrated this massive turn on his best friend, MJF. Like, is Adam Cole going to have to do a face turn now when he comes back?
I'll be honest with you, man. If they're smart, they will
stay away.
Yeah. They can, you can reference this kind of stuff maybe in a backstage segment where, they run into each other and give each other the evil eye or something like that. If they end up, I'll be honest with you. There has been such a shift in AEW since their last confrontation or the end of their feud, basically. There's been such a shift since World's End. There's been such a shift that there's going to be a number of, if Adam Cole does come back, there's going to be a number of feuds, fresh feuds waiting for Adam Cole. There's a bunch of fresh feuds waiting for MJF. They don't ever have to cross paths. And it's entirely possible, given that you would think that maybe Adam Cole, the dude he's been wrestling for like 20 years. He seems to really love the Twitch stuff and the content creation stuff. He's probably made a mint. He's probably made a lot of money. I don't know that they'll ever cross paths again or they ever need to feud again. I don't think we need closure from this. I think the Brainbuster was probably meant to be.
Yeah, it seemed like that was supposed to wrap up their feud. MJF, gave Adam Cole his comeuppance, and then that was that.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because it seems evident, even though Adam Cole, apparently has been backstage at AEW programming, we haven't heard anything about when he might return. The seemingly the severity of his broken leg, where he'd have surgery, I think, and get some plates and stuff, breaking both the bones. And obviously that's taken a long time to rehab so far.
Yeah.
And who knows how much more time he has to rehabilitate that injury. So,
yeah.
First and foremost is the health and happiness of the wrestlers, and hopefully the injury wasn't so severe that it jeopardizes his mobility for, the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, people break their legs and have surgery to repair those breaks fairly frequently, but that's not to say complications can't happen. They can.
Yeah.
So, hopefully the best for him. And if he comes back to wrestle, awesome. And if they can find an interesting, creative way to bring MJF and Adam Cole back together for a feud that's interesting and satisfying, sure, give it to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's at this point, it's so messy, just in terms of the creative approach they've had to it after the injury that you just want to stay away from that for a while.
How do you even? Yeah,
because it's going to be the first thing people are going to think of is the AEW Devil, and they're going to dump on it, whether it's good or not initially.
Yeah, this is not something that it's like when Ciampa Gargano was hampered by injury. People were like, "Oh, revisit that," because it was all rooted in relative realism and not friggin' weird mask stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if anybody really has anybody's chomping to get back at this. I think if done as a proper normal feud, you can revisit these two competitors going at it, but you gotta base it off stuff in the ring, not necessarily, oh, this is what you did to me. Yeah, that would be treading ground that I don't know if they want to revisit.
Yeah.
Anyways, Larson, would you like to go ahead and pay some bills now?
Let's do it. This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by BetterHelp. Steve, there was once a time in my life when I was young, and I was quite a curious child. When I first got into baseball, I used to go and buy a bunch of baseball cards, and I'd open the packs, and look at the backs of the cards and study the stats and try to memorize like who hit for what average during, a certain season. But somewhere along my way to adulthood, I kind of lost that curiosity. Even when I find something that I do want to learn, the drive to actually learn it just isn't there.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I've seen it with my own kids. They're constantly learning and growing. Perhaps due to everything we have to concern ourselves with as adults, I've found that sense of curiosity certainly isn't what it used to be for me. But therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, and if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is completely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. All you got to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
I've spoken about it here on the show a lot, but in my mid-20s, my life was basically taken over by severe anxiety, and I had definitely lost any sense of curiosity. I didn't want to do anything. Eventually, I realized that I had to go to therapy, and therapy helped me learn the skills I needed to better cope with my anxiety and got my life back on track and put me on the path becoming a better Larson. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/raw today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/raw. Let's get a word from our sponsor, Liquid IV. Steve, football is back, and the weather is getting cooler. That must mean fall is nearly upon us. Yeah. Well, I'm starting to work weekend football watching back to my fall rituals. One ritual that remains constant for you and I are our year-round, semi-weekly, one-on-one basketball games. We do it all year long.
That's right, man. There's no season for us. All year is season. Temperatures may be down this time of the year, but hydration is still a priority when we're hooping, and hydration and energy deserves to be a priority this fall with Liquid IV.
And Steve, we've known each other for a very, 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 very long time.
Yeah.
You know me pretty well.
I do.
Would you describe me as a high-energy individual?
Not at all.
Of course not. I'm not, so it helps me tremendously when I can get a pep in my step when we're playing one-on-one. In one stick of Liquid IV Hydration Multiplier plus energy and 16 ounces of water delivers 100 milligrams of natural caffeine, plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Liquid IV has also combined their awesome peach flavor with the highly requested blackberry to provide an all-in-one formula that hydrates better than water alone and leaves me feeling focused and alert so I can accomplish all the things that I want to do on and off the basketball court.
So tear, pour, and live more and start a new fall ritual with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code RAW at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RAW at liquidiv.com. All right, man, let's move on now to number 8. Hornswoggle versus Chavo Guerrero.
So I wasn't watching wrestling a whole lot. 2009, 2010. This is around the time of the guest host era.
This was awful stuff.
And apparently there was a stretch from July of 2009 to October of 2009 where basically every week on Raw, Hornswoggle and Chavo Guerrero would be in some ridiculous gimmick match that the guest host would in some way decide.
Yeah.
For example, I have some of the matches here. So the first match between them actually was on Superstars.
Mm-hmm.
But then on July 13th, 2009, they had Chavo has one arm tied behind his back match.
I think that first one was Chavo fights on his knees match.
Okay. So anyways, Hornswoggle wins that in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Next, this is according to Cage Match.
He had already won, I think the one he had already won on Superstars.
No,
well,
Hornswoggle
right?
won that one too.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So we had a sharp-dressed man tuxedo match.
The guest host was, of course,
ZZ Top.
ZZ Top, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is the game we should play, is who was the guest host that decided on these stipulations. So Hornswoggle wins that 2.5 minutes.
Yes, he does.
Next, the following week, Chavo Guerrero is blindfolded. So it's a blindfold match, but only Chavo is blindfolded.
This might have been Jeremy Piven. I know Jeremy Piven was in one of these.
Interesting. Anyways, Hornswoggle wins that 3.5 minutes. But wait, there's more. So they had a Falls Count Anywhere match.
I think Snoop Dogg was that one.
A boxing match.
Yeah. God, who was it? It was a boxer. I don't think it was Floyd. It was somebody. I forget. I forget who it was, but it was a boxer.
And they had a Texas bull rope match.
Chavo had giant boxing gloves,
like
gimmick
cartoonishly
ones.
large ones, yeah.
So he couldn't get any shots.
Was it the Texas bull rope match where he had to wear the cow costume?
I think that would make sense.
Because one of them he had to wear a cow outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these matches lasted anywhere between 2 and 3.5 minutes. Just ridiculous comedy stuff.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
How many of these stipulations do you think Vince came up with on his own?
All?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is probably like priority number 1 for Vince during this stretch, because it literally, in my mind, simply existed to make him laugh.
Yes, 1,000%.
That's it. I'm sure there are kids that probably got a kick out of this, but nobody who appreciates the what is it called? The science of the
sweet science of professional wrestling.
The sweet science of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Nobody.
So apparently, Chavo did get a win in this feud. It was a tag match. It was him and Chris Masters.
Okay.
Against Hornswoggle and Santino.
It was also revealed during this stretch that Mark Henry is the cousin to Hornswoggle, or at least that's what Hornswoggle said when he said, "You're going to be taking on my cousin," and it being Mark Henry with a little leprechaun hat on. Which, come on, is pretty funny.
Remember when Penta was wrestling Cody on St. Patrick's Day and he took the hat from the crowd?
I do. Let's move on because I don't like talking about this. Number 7. Yeah, Triple H versus Big Papa Pump. Where your freaks at, Scott Steiner?
Something you're excited to talk about here, Scott Steiner, huh?
There that time Scott Steiner was in an interview. I think it was with Simon Miller, and he called Stephanie McMahon. Man, this was only a couple years ago, too.
Wasn't long ago, no.
That was not that long
apparently
ago.
He's got a bone to pick with Triple H about this.
Triple H was sandbagging me.
So,
I had drop foot.
Yeah, he did. He one of his feet wasn't working right.
So here's the deal with this, man. This was because you and I both watched the Wrestling Bios episode on this, and this is also something that we had heard going back ages since this feud. Scott Steiner, when he came to WWE, was banged up.
Yeah.
He was dealing with all sorts of injuries, including drop foot. Yeah.
He had a bad back, too.
Got a bad back. By the time he ended up in TNA, he had kind of at least a resurgence. There's also the matter of, in TNA, similar to WCW, he had a lot more freedom. There weren't the people there to sort of check. So when he's like, Smoke Joe, you're fat. That would never have really flown in WWE, at least not the way that Scott Steiner would probably prefer it, with the leeway he was usually given, and the leeway he simply took in WCW.
Yeah.
Nobody gave him anything. He just took it. And so, but similar to a year later when Goldberg came in, I feel like if everything had lined up and Scott Steiner dialed back the belly-to-belly suplexes and was able physically to wrestle as well as he could, and was able to connect with the audience with his promos the way that he had before, I think they probably would have. Triple H, same as Goldberg. Goldberg beat him for the world title. Triple H just knew he'd always get it back at sometime soon. And so I feel like it just wasn't a combination of Steiner's injuries and the WWE system not really being able to maximize Big Papa Pump.
Yeah.
Freakzilla.
I mean, they reduced Steiner to his muscles, essentially, when he debuted, because so much of the build, they were trying to protect him from having to wrestle up until the Rumble match. And so it was all, hey, let's have an arm wrestling match. Hey, let's do a pose off. Hey, let's have a bench press contest. It's all this super kind of scripted sports entertainment stuff, as opposed to letting Scott Steiner pretty much go out there and shoot on Triple H,
Yeah, dude. When it seems like, when you put together the pieces, it seems like Scott Steiner works best when he knows that he can do whatever he wants to do, and he doesn't have to be dictated anything by like a Vince McMahon. Like when you have weaker leadership, Scott Steiner will rise to the top.
He fills that vacuum, huh?
Nobody's gonna punish him, so he just goes out in there and does what he wants to do.
Yeah. No, I mean it seems to be the case. That was the case in WCW. I mean, you can debate about the results, but he gave you something to talk about. Same with TNA and Impact. And the only thing people were talking about were how lousy the matches were, specifically the Royal Rumble one.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they just didn't have. They didn't set up, especially with Ric Flair next to Triple H. Mm-hmm. There's given Scott Steiner's extensive issues with Ric Flair, historically speaking. That's something you could use. He could make the comparison. Oh, you're today's Ric Flair. I have a problem with you for these reasons.
You're today's butt sucker.
Something like that. Where's the personal beef?
Mm-hmm.
That really hits, that makes you feel, oh, these two dudes do not like each other. Instead, you just have, all right, we have this match. Scott Steiner can basically barely wrestle this juncture, and they lose the crowd, and they start cheering for Triple H and booing Steiner.
Well, that was the fascinating part. They're also on Boston, which is where Triple H is from.
Hunter from Boston.
From Boston. The lead up to this match, though, because Steiner couldn't really wrestle, they had a couple of house show matches, and apparently they didn't go all that great. But, they didn't really keep him wrestling on TV. So it's not like he could do the thing in WCW where it's like you line up two jabronis and he puts both of them in the Steiner recliner at the same time.
But at the same time, even if Steiner's not in great ring shape in terms of his cardio, in terms of his foot.
Doesn't take much to do that.
Do a 1 minute squash match. You hit a couple belly to bellies, you stack them, you put them in the Steiner recliner.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
He shows off his massive biceps.
Yeah. Well, he did do that in this feud, of course.
No, he did.
They
did
the
that,
pose off.
He's got to get on the mic and.
I'll be honest with you, man. I was watching at the time, and I remember this feud. Triple H was hilarious doing this stuff. Triple H, as the guy who's outmatched physically, is comedically on point. The arm wrestling stuff where he sort of kicks the chair away and he's struggling to keep it together. Yeah. It's funny stuff. The bodybuilding stuff when he's marveling at Scott Steiner's bicep.
Yeah.
That's funny stuff. I knew that it was goofy, but it was to his credit, Triple H was pretty entertaining here, and he was selling the shit out of Scott Steiner. To his credit, Triple H was trying with him. It's just, he had to know at a certain point, man, that, the crowd turned on him. And then when they sort of went to the round 2, when it was against Evolution, really.
Yeah.
Maybe the thought was, hey, I got this new crew. The odds are stacked even further against Scott Steiner, and that's going to get the crowd on his side. And they just weren't able to recover it because the crowd just didn't want to see Steiner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's interesting.
Because they're a bunch of butt suckers.
It's interesting. It was during this feud that Evolution was formed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The freaks turned on me. All right, let's go on. Let's go on to number 6. I am shocked, Larson. You did not put this at number 1. I'm talking, of course, about
it's dreadful.
Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler.
Just dreadful.
Michael Cole.
Heel Michael Cole. So, of course, it was Cole versus Lawler at WrestleMania 27. It was Lawler's only WrestleMania match. It was also Michael Cole's only WrestleMania match. But despite how awful that match was and how awful the build was, they actually had more matches after that one. That wasn't one and done. So the whole genesis of this is Michael Cole getting an ego. It's hey, I'm the voice of WWE. And he started, getting some arrogance about him. And went full-fledged heel, cheering for the heels on commentary, talking shit about the faces. So he had a role reversal. We had Lawler, traditionally heel commentator, being the face. Michael Cole, usually just a play-by-play announcer, now actively a heel.
Yeah.
I don't know who wanted, other than one person, this match to happen at WrestleMania. The match itself was only 14 minutes. The entire segment, from beginning of the entrances to the very end, I feel like was at least a half hour.
No, it was. We timed it before. We did
a
raw view on this.
It was a massive time suck, and it was unbearable.
I remember because this was around the time we would still, like, once I moved back here, we would still get together and watch all the WrestleManias at the very least. I remember trying to watch weekly television during this period of time and being so turned off by Michael Cole. Because, like, what was this, 2011?
2011,
2010.
yeah. It's 2011.
I remember in the build to this being so turned off by Michael Cole's commentary because it was just his obnoxious heel character in every match. I had to turn it off like a lot. I would flip the channel from Raw a lot, and so I wouldn't keep up with a lot of what was going on because it was just so bad. It was so bad. And then the match itself, Stone Cold got involved. I think he was the guest referee.
Yeah, he was. And Jack Swagger was out there, got involved. It boggles my mind. I didn't watch wrestling for a long time leading up to WrestleMania 27. I watched it at your house, and I am absolutely shocked that WrestleMania did not put me off wrestling for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because it's an awful WrestleMania.
Well, of course, it took Phil Brooks, CM Punk to bring you back with the pipe bomb, man. So you really owe him for all the success.
I suppose I really do. Thanks,
you really
Phil.
Do. You absolutely do.
So they had 2 more matches after their Mania match. They had a tag team strap match at Extreme Rules, which was Jack Swagger and Cole teaming up against Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. And that match lasted more than 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And then at Over the Limit, they had a Kiss My Foot match that I think Bret Hart was involved in.
Oh, yeah.
That saw Lawler beat Michael Cole in about 3 minutes. They had a 1-minute match on Raw in 2012. Even after Cole lost the feud to Lawler, he kind of like said, "Hey, Lawler, I'm sorry I was a jerk to you." But he was still heel commentator up until Jerry Lawler had his heart attack on Raw. During commentary. And it was after that they just ditched the heel Michael Cole thing. And when Jerry came back, I think about 2 months later, Michael Cole gave him a hug, and that was like solidified. No more heel Michael Cole.
Yeah, I remember. I distinctly remember that he was almost crying when he came back. Yeah, it was. I mean, that's got to be absolutely crazy. But yeah, best left forgotten, that particular feud.
Oh, it was bad.
It was really bad. It was very bad.
Somewhere in there, Michael Cole had a match against John Cena and got barbecue sauce poured all over him too, I believe.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, JR, because JR was pushing the barbecue sauce back then. I remember that. Yeah. Awful stuff. Just absolutely awful. Anyways, let's move on now to number 5. CM Punk versus Ryback.
Oh, man.
Dude, it's so funny because when you go back and look at the last stretch of CM Punk's first run in WWE, and you see like just how much Ryback there was in it, it's pretty obscene because like Ryback versus CM Punk went through at least one heel/face turn.
It did. So let's go towards the end of 2012, I believe. By that point, Ryback had squashed a bunch of jobbers and was getting pretty over because he was squashing a bunch of jobbers, doing the feed me more thing, hitting everybody with shell shots.
Super over, man.
He was super over. John Cena gets hurt. He was supposed to be in a program with CM Punk for the WWE title, leading up to Hell in a Cell. So CM Punk talks about his rivalry with Ryback, both in front of cameras and behind the scenes, on the Art of Wrestling podcast with Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
And he says that Vince called him and said, "Hey, Cena's hurt, so I want you to get into a program with Ryback. We know he's not ready, but you can carry him."
Yeah.
And so Punk's like, "All right." So according to Punk, Ryback has disputed this. At some point, either in this feud or the following one, when Ryback was a heel and aligned with Heyman and Punk was a face, for sure one injury happened there.
Yeah.
Or one incident happened there. At one point, Punk says Ryback kicked him as hard as he could in the ribs, broke a rib. And then another time was supposed to do a press slam, put him through a table, and is out in the concrete. And Punk kind of hits the side of the table and just lands right on the floor. Now, Ryback says there was padding where Punk landed. It was just a badly planned, executed spot. It shouldn't have happened to begin with. So who you choose to believe there, whatever. Fact of the matter is Ryback was not ready to be a main eventer when he first feuded with CM Punk. And that Hell in a Cell match ended with Brad Maddox
Yeah, I remember that.
costing Ryback the match.
Mm-hmm.
Punk and Ryback had another match, a triple threat with John Cena. It's when The Shield debuted
Right.
at Survivor Series 2012.
Yeah.
And then it was after Punk dropped the title to The Rock in early 2013 that he had his face turned. Heyman joined up with Ryback and Curtis Axel. Rybaxel.
Rybaxel.
That Punk feuded again with Ryback. And again, on Art of Wrestling, Punk's like, hey, whatever issues we had in the past, clean slate, let's go out there. And I think he said, let's make this mid-card feud feel like a main event one. And it was after one of the injuries where Punk went up to Ryback backstage and says, you're either a fucking idiot or you're awful. Which one is it for hurting me? And Ryback says, well, I guess I'm a fucking idiot. According to Punk.
Couldn't cop to being awful, I guess.
The matches weren't good, and
You're forgetting one thing too. They did 2 Hell in a Cell matches.
They did 2
the
Hell in a
second
Cell.
one
Yeah, your part, I think.
Was a handicap match.
Yeah, it was Heyman and Ryback.
Yeah, CM Punk versus Heyman and Ryback.
Yep, I remember that.
Maybe Punk was just like, thank God, at least I've got Heyman I'll have, calming me down on all this stuff.
Yeah. The backstage
Ryback,
rivalry it ended up being way more entertaining than what happened on camera.
Yeah, Phil is something else. When that Art of Wrestling podcast, I know it caused all sorts of horrible drama,
did.
But my God, he is hilarious. Whether he knows it or not, it is a hilarious podcast.
Yeah, it is the way he's telling some of these stories. Yeah,
because it's just catastrophe after catastrophe.
It really is. It's just a string of just bad shit after bad shit happening to him.
And it doesn't surprise. It's funny because after every, I don't know who. I understand so much why he identifies with Bret Hart, because he's another guy that Vince just put through the ringer. A guy who's just so reliable, and on top of that, like so over, because Bret Hart was over, but CM Punk was just like today he is. So over. That guy just connects with the crowd.
So Punk tells these, a couple incidences where Vince calls him up, like one right after he had knee surgery, and says, I booked you for this match 3 weeks after you're coming out of surgery.
Yeah.
I owe you one. That was Vince's refrain, apparently. I'll owe you one.
I'll owe you one, yeah.
But never
pays on.
Was that paid out,
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, I know you're going to talk about this next one, Steve.
Oh, man. I'm looking forward to this one because I watched like 2 videos on it. Let's go with number 4. Hulk Hogan versus the Dungeon of Doom. This is what got us Dark Hulk Hogan.
When he got his mustache shaved off him.
Yeah, and he started wearing black. And I remember, over the years, I've seen pictures of like this Hulk Hogan. I'm like, I don't remember when he was NWO Hogan without a mustache, but no, he was sporting the same kind of attire because the Dungeon of Doom made him find the evil inside so that he could save the Hulkamaniacs from Dungeon of Doom or whatever. I don't know. But basically, in 1993, Hulk Hogan was, of course, the man. 95. Sorry, it's a year before NWO, 95. He was the man. And he's also the man who had a creative control, and so he just would never lose, really. Enter Kevin Sullivan, who is tasked with, because he is the Taskmaster, for those who didn't get the joke.
He did there.
He was tasked with creating a powerful faction to combat the power of Hulk Hogan.
To end Hulkamania.
That's right. Apparently preceding the Dungeon of Doom, he had the 3 Faces of Fear.
Also, wanted to end Hulkamania.
Yeah, really? They wanted to put Hulkamania out of its misery because by 1995... even it's a short year after signing with WCW, too much fanfare. By 1995,
let's be honest, no one gave a shit anymore.
The honeymoon was over.
No one gave a shit.
And I don't mean good wrestling over. I mean done.
Yeah.
And so, obviously the smart move is to create a storyline and a faction that really has probably more relevancy in 1985 than 1995.
It's very much a watered down version of what Kevin Sullivan was doing in Florida.
It was a very like G-rated version of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I will say this, though. The production value on the cheesy Dungeon of Doom sets, because, like, you know, Hulk Hogan goes and invades, like, the Dungeon of Doom's dungeon or whatever it is. And it actually looks like an cave. Yeah, looks like it's a cave. Probably just all on the set there. And Hogan shows up, and, like, the lighting is actually really nice and moody.
Yeah.
And they've got, like, obviously a fog machine, which is cool. And all the makeup on, like, you know, the I don't know who was the main, like, the guy sitting there. He looked kind of like Brando from Apocalypse Now.
Oh, the Master?
Was he the Master?
King,
yeah, you're right.
King Curtis Ikea.
Yes, you're right. That's right. Yeah, it was the Master. And, like, his production, his costume was really well done. But it's just, you know, then Hogan shows up, and you got Sullivan wearing these, like, you know, bright red spandex with a couple of lightning bolts on it. And then Hogan shows up, and it's like, this is legitimately the cringiest thing you'll ever see. Like, imagine being a 45-year-old man, like, you know, you and I are approximately, sitting in our living room watching this, and then Lacey walks in, and she's like, what the fuck? Oh, I would die.
Yeah.
I would just die.
Yeah.
You think Bobby Lashley's Sisters is bad. This eclipses that.
And it went on for like a year.
Yeah, it went on forever. We did get number one, the revelation that number one, the debut of the Giant, the Big Show, the revelation, although short-lived, that he was Andre the Giant's son, and that he was proficient at driving monster trucks.
Yeah,
we had a monster truck match,
first of its kind, I believe.
I think the only of its kind. Don't recall another one after this.
Yeah, it happened, and then the Giant ended up in the Detroit River, and yet managed to come back for the main event. This was at Halloween Havoc, I believe. And won by DQ.
Yeah.
And then, so the next night, I guess it would be on Nitro. No, it would be on Nitro. Oh, yeah, it would be on Nitro. That was 96 when this happened. No, it wasn't. It was 95. 95. So it would have been on Nitro.
It was still Nitro, though.
Yeah, it was on Nitro. It was September 95. It was revealed that there was some fine print in the contract that title could change hands via DQ. So the Giant won the championship, but didn't get it lifted up, hoisted at Halloween Havoc. Yeah. It was the next night on Nitro. It was given to him.
Yeah, and then it was discovered that because of the cheaty nature of the DQ, it was vacated. So, you know, that was Hogan always had that sort of those caveat losses. You know, it's like he lost to Lex Luger clean in front of a crazy hot crowd in 97 on Nitro, lost the title there, but because there was a pay-per-view the following weekend, he got it right back. Similar here with the Giant, he got it right back. But yeah, and you know, for that period of time, you know, he had a match against Sting. He was like, oh, I don't need friends, brother. But then he did get their back, and he was fine with them. It was a whole journey that he went on.
It really was.
A really kind of crazy one. Again, don't bore me, and none of this is boring, but it was horrible.
It was not good. You had a Beefcake in the Dungeon of
Zodiac.
As the Zodiac, but he was a spy for Hogan.
Yeah.
And when he was revealed as spy for Hogan, he changed his name to the Booty Man.
The Booty Man, yeah. Do you remember, like, what was the origin of, like, why did he call himself the Booty Man?
I don't know.
Should have called himself the Snitch.
Something.
The Zodiac is a really cool name.
It is.
I mean, because serial killer, you know. Which isn't cool.
No, it's not cool at all.
It's a really good movie.
It's an awesome
Anyways,
movie. Go watch that movie.
On.
You haven't seen it before. It's fantastic.
Oh, my God. It is like a top movie for me, yeah. Let's move on to number 3. New Blood versus Millionaires Club.
The whole premise of this was backwards. So, essentially what happened was Russo came to WCW in late 1999.
Yeah.
Said, hey, let's have Tank Abbott win the WCW title by knocking out Sid. He was relieved of his duties as head of creative. Said, you could be on the committee. He said no.
He threw out, listen, they're in a brainstorming meeting. He threw out, hey, you know what? We got this guy, Tank Abbott. He's a legit tough guy. Let's have him one punch Sid. It'll be shocking.
You're fired.
Get out of here. You're fired. Get out of here.
So April of 2000, they brought him back as well as Bischoff, and they were going to be like joint head of creative.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so they proposed just a full-on reset of WCW. Not a terrible idea. WCW
Kind of cool. I remember watching that one.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. Well, why not just do a full reset? And so there was a dividing line within WCW for the most part. You had the veterans. Well, gosh, it gets the definitions. I won't say veterans. You get the...
Can I propose this?
Sure.
Anybody who had a favored nations clause was in the Millionaires Club.
Sure. You could have called it Favored Nations Club. Let's say that. So you had Hogan, Luger, DDP, Nash, Sting, all the long-time WCW names.
The video game cover guys, except
Raven.
For Goldberg.
He was a new blood.
And Bret Hart.
Was it? Yeah, that's why it doesn't make any sense. So then you had New Blood, and their whole thing was, hey, we're tired of being held down by the Favored Nations Club.
Right.
But then you have, I know Shane Douglas was at that time new to that iteration of WCW, but he'd been wrestling for 20 years.
That dude was old at the time, man.
Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
You mentioned Goldberg, Bret Hart. So that right there doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Is it going to be veterans versus up-and-coming talent? All right. That's a story that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
But then another issue was the up-and-coming talent, the new blood, even though they had a bunch of veterans in the group, whose whole thing was, hey, main event guys, you've been holding us down for years. They were portrayed as the heels.
Yeah, well, it's interesting the way, because, again, doing our research, which is the most fun part of these things, watching Pro Wrestling Bios, the YouTube channel, and the way he put it was, WCW's attendance had fallen off a cliff at this point. Anybody willing to plunk down money in 2000 for WCW must really love WCW. The problem is those people are paying to go see the Favored Nations Club. And so you can't make them the bad guy. Here's the funny thing about this. Number one, the name New Blood is a fucking badass name. And they had the talent for it. And I'm not talking about Shane Douglas.
No. I
love the franchise, don't get me wrong. But he really should have, I don't know where he lands, because he wasn't getting a Favored Nations clause in his contract. But at the same time, he wasn't exactly New Blood.
No, far from it.
But names, even though I think at that point Vampiro had been around for a little while, but names like Vampiro.
But he was relatively new to WCW.
He was, and he was fucking cool. He was cool as hell. You could have even thrown Rey Mysterio, who was still a young man then. I mean, what was he like? I don't know. He probably wasn't even 30 at that point.
I doubt it.
You get Ray in there, you get him, Billy Kidman, you get him in there. You get the Jindrax, the O'Hares, all those kind of guys. I don't know where they were in terms of, like, because I think the what's-her-face, the Natural Born Thrillers, I don't know if they came before or after. I think they came after.
They were part of New Blood.
They were part of New Blood?
Yeah.
Okay. But you do that, and you have the Millionaires Club, the Favored Nations Club, start to help each other out in their matches against these younger guys. And so, yeah, I think there was a way you could have done this. And then maybe a guy like Sting, who people just really want to root for, maybe he starts distancing himself from the Favored Nations Club. There's a way you could have done this that really could have worked. Vince Russo's not savvy enough to do that. And Eric Bischoff and his alliance with Hulk Hogan, I think Hulk Hogan alone probably just wasn't going to make this work. Although he did lose 3 times to Billy Kidman during the course of this. I don't know if Kidman was really the guy. I think it kind of proved that Kidman should have been more of an RVD guy.
Yeah.
And the thing the reason I say that is because RVD was always a character who looked like he could give a damn. It's like, I'm just going to go in there and people are going to talk about what I do in the ring. I'm going to do this shit. But like RVD never had the persona that was like, hey, look at me.
Yeah.
He was never like an arrogant guy or a bragging guy. He was just, stoner guy.
I mean, all this was kind of like, look at me.
I know, but you know what I'm saying, right?
He wasn't. Here's the thing about RVD. He wasn't going to ever come out and cut a promo. Hey, I'm better than you, and I'm going to show it to you.
That's what I mean. He
would just go out there and put on the best match of the card.
And this right here is his promo in the ring.
Yeah.
Billy Kidman, when he was with the Flock, people were like, "Oh shit, this guy." He did like the shooting star press, acting like he didn't care. You know what I mean? Like, remember, he would just fling his body up there, and then he ended up concussing Chavo, but that was a couple of years later. But that's why Kidman worked. He was kind of the Darby Allin of his time.
Yeah.
He was all scrubby and stuff. And then he cleaned up, and he started talking, and he started being earnest babyface. We don't want that. We want the guy who looked like he just woke up and had a match, you know?
You know who they should have had beat Hogan 3 times?
Hold on, don't tell me. Mark Jindrak?
That's a good answer, too. Mike Awesome. Imagine him power bombing Hogan out of the ring through a table.
Holy shit. That would have been amazing. That guy would have definitely ended Hulkamania. That would have been fantastic. Awesome. Oh, that'd have been great.
Despite the huge plans they may have had for this New Blood versus Millionaires Club feud, it only lasted 3 months. From April to July, and then it just they pulled the plug on it.
My favorite thing about that is that the New Blood Rising pay-per-view happened after the feud actually died.
Because it was at Bash at the Beach, the pay-per-view where Bruce had the shoot promo on Hogan and Bischoff left, and Hogan eventually sued WCW. It was the next month, where the New Blood Rising pay-per-view happened.
Let's see. The New Blood Rising pay-per-view, by the way, was, let's see here. Booker T, I think, was Booker T part of the Millionaires Club, or was he New Blood?
He was New Blood.
So was Jeff Jarrett. They fought in the main event. Kevin Nash defeated New Blood member Goldberg and New Blood member Scott Steiner in a triple threat. Vampiro and the Great Muta defeated Chronic. Lance Storm defeated Mike Awesome.
Oh, hold on. You're burying the lead, Steve. Sting defeated the Demon.
Was the Demon New Blood? Was the Demon New Blood?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I think he was neutral. I think he was free agent. Ernest Miller defeated the Great Muta?
Yeah, Great Muta wrestled twice that night.
What the hell? That's nuts.
Oh, New Blood Rising has the Judy Bagwell on a forklift match.
Wow, boy. That New Blood, the New Blood really did.
Wait, Chronic wrestled twice, too.
Was there... What? They did 2 tag team championship matches.
They did. Interesting.
How's Vince
WCW
Russo
2000
for you,
for
man?
you.
It's like Survivor Series 98 all over again. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin.
So they had, back when Baron was Constable Corbin, he booked himself in a Universal title match against Roman. We're not talking about that one. Although Constable Corbin was not good. We're talking, of course, about late 2019, early 2020, the rivalry, the story that almost forced Roman Reigns to make the decision, I'm done with WWE. And we're talking about the dog food stuff, where it was Baron, it was Dolph, dumping dog food all over Roman Reigns while he's, I think, handcuffed to the ring post. That whole storyline. Baron actually beat Roman. He's the last person before Jey Uso to pin Roman Reigns during a match. During this feud. And just think, from a historic standpoint, if Roman and Paul Heyman hadn't come up with the idea for the head of the table, Tribal Chief Roman Reigns, and if this story was enough for Roman to retire from wrestling, how different the fortunes of WWE would probably be right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no bloodline. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, it'd have been vastly different. Yeah, it's absolutely mind-boggling. I never did watch the biography on Roman Reigns, and it's something that I really want to watch because I know he talked about this stuff, how he didn't have the kind of fuck you stroke, and he wasn't making fuck off money in order to, tell Vince, no, I'm not going to do this. Well, be it whatever you want to call it, when pandemic showed up and Roman Reigns decided, hey, I have to, keep an eye on my health, went off and wouldn't come back until he got his way with, okay, this is the story that needs to be told. Yeah, and the dog food stuff was a result of a lot of that, discontent. And it's a shame. I don't know what the fuck Vince was thinking here. It's absolutely asinine. And this is what people talk about when they talk about WWE 2019 and just how bad it got. Just really just awful stuff. We're both fans of Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
But honestly, talk about a guy whose fortunes probably should have been much different, and probably would have been if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. He's had stretches here and there, and he's a highly versatile performer, but never ever been given creative that was anything more than just like decent. His NXT run, decent. So much of what he had been given prior to that, and really since then, since he got called back up, just not good at all.
Nope.
So yeah,
more on that now, I guess.
Yeah. Let's go ahead. Number one. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. This is a feud that really should have been an era-defining feud, and in some ways, I guess it is. Unfortunately, it's a feud that's just marred by match after match after match after match of the same fucking template.
Yes.
Spamming finishers.
I mean, the first match at WrestleMania 31 wasn't exactly that. They were trying to tell a story there. But at that point, Roman had won the Rumble in the January prior to a chorus of boos when The Rock came out, raised his arm, and The Rock was confused. What is this sound? Boos. I haven't heard this in forever.
And they did the go home where they were playing tug of war with the title.
Yeah. And they had Seth Rollins cash in, so the unpopular Roman Reigns wouldn't win. Everybody was starting to already get tired of Brock Lesnar at that point. Seth came in, saved the day, won the title. And it seemed like they just were perpetually pushing on Roman Reigns' coronation as the guy by beating Brock Lesnar. Because they wrestled again at WrestleMania 34. He thought, oh, this is the time. This is when Roman wins decisively. No, Brock wins. You think, all right, greatest Royal Rumble. Maybe they'll have Roman win there in the cage match. No, Brock wins again. It wasn't until SummerSlam 2018 when in one of the most cartoonish cash-in attempts we've ever seen, Braun Strowman gets involved to think about cashing in, and Brock chucks his briefcase up the ramp. That Roman finally beats Brock, but it's not the decisive. The match was only 6 minutes long. I mean, it's not the decisive, clear outcome that would lead you to believe, coronation, this is the guy now.
Right.
And every time they just kept going back to the well of Brock versus Roman, and it never really felt satisfying, except for one instance. It was SummerSlam 2022 where Brock brought the tractor out.
Yeah, that was the last one they had, right? Wasn't that the?
Yeah, because after that, Brock said the stipulation is that if Brock lost, he wouldn't challenge for the title ever again.
Yeah. And that was tons of fun. Triple H seems to understand. I think Triple H was paying attention in 2017, that Braun Roman rivalry, because he seems to understand how to up the stakes when it comes to destruction and bringing out this cartoonish tractor and lifting up the thing. That was wildly fun. It was really cool. But it's funny. You go back to that Bryan Danielson interview recently where he said, after I won at 30, Vince McMahon sat me down and said, "Hey, we're going to make Roman Reigns. That's what we're going to do. Aren't you excited?" And he's like, "Well, I'm here. Why are you telling me that?" And so it's clear that Vince always wanted to get Roman over. That's obvious. And trying to use Brock and, him beating The Undertaker.
Exactly.
Was, I think, Vince's grand plan, but it just was clusterfuck after clusterfuck. And this ham-fisted approach to quote unquote shoving Roman down our throats just was so obvious. There was you and I both remember, we always point out there were a few moments when, for example, Roman Reigns grew a pair and beat up Triple H, beat up Vince McMahon, the whole Sheamus cash-in thing. that was like the crowd was behind Roman. They were like, finally, this guy is showing something here. But time after time, he would fade into the background. I'll be honest, even as recent as WrestleMania 40, when you see The Rock show up, they show up to that Vegas thing and Roman Reigns is by his side. Reigns was the champion. He should have been front and center and Rock having his back.
Nope, it was the opposite though.
And so too often the dude just falls to the back when there was something else going on. Dean Ambrose versus Triple H. It seemed like, well, this is supposed to be a Roman Reigns rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this was Vince McMahon just trying his damnedest and not understanding the basics of how to get this thing done, because it should have written itself, to be honest with you.
So they had another Universal title match, Roman and Brock did, at Crown Jewel 2021. And then, of course, Mania 38, the unification bout. And then it was SummerSlam 2022 where they had the last man standing. That was the longest match they had. That was 22 minutes. Everything else was no more than about 12. Except, let me see their first match, how long that was, the one at Mania 31. That was only 16:45. So the longest match was their last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where they actually seemed like, hey, let's tell a story.
Yeah.
And let's have some mayhem and destruction and chaos.
Let's do some fun stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Their first match was going along fine. It was an all right bout, but the crowd just wasn't invested in it. And that just kind of continued on for the better part of like 5 years.
When you lose the benefit of the doubt with the fan base, it's really difficult to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Seth Rollins cashed in, it was like, oh shit, they're actually paying attention because they know that we don't like this. So yeah. Anyways, that's going to do it for Count Out today. Hey, do us a solid. Leave us a comment on this video. Hit that thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. And then, load up those comments with what are some of your worst rivalries in the history of pro wrestling. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you guys around.
Goodbye.